At the end of another week, jam-packed with news from Washington, it's time for Shields and Brooks. That's syndicated columnist Mark Shields and New York Times columnist David Brooks. Welcome, gentlemen. So, what is there to talk about, Mark, but yesterday's climate change decision, the president's announcement that the United States will pull out of the Paris Climate Accord. What did you make of it?
An immediate impact, Judy. It probably means less in the American environment than the rules and regulations already repealed by his administration and by his EPA that were put in force, emissions control by President Obama. But in a larger sense, it belies and reveals the president's sense about the world. The world is a dangerous, sinister place. There's conspiracies. Other countries are not our friends or our partners. Everything is transactional. There are no fixed values. I mean, we saw that, I thought, most dramatically at NATO, where the president showed an absolute absence of any historical understanding of American exceptionalism. And as one who frankly subscribes to it, that 3 times in the 20th century, the United States saved the world from totalitarianism, twice in world wars, once in the Cold War, and 124,965 American graves are around the world in cemeteries, and 94,000 still missing. And I just don't understand. The president knows that it was for values. And NATO's made mistakes. We've made mistakes. We've been guilty of hubris. But the world is a much better place because of the United States leadership. And this was an example of the United States working with other nations for a common good to preserve our planet, and he just turned his back on it.
What did you make of the president's decision and his argument for why he did it?
Yeah, well, I sort of agree with Mark. It was nice to have an American century. We were a superpower once, and now we're headed the way of Portugal. No, it was, environmentally, I can't get super excited about it. I think it was a setback for the cause of addressing global warming. But as we've heard many times, it was a voluntary agreement. And so this, and we've done a very good job because of natural gas and fracking and other things of reducing emissions over the last 5 years or so. And I presume the market will still work and the emissions will still come down. And so Donald Trump could have addressed his concerns about coal workers and stayed in the Paris Accords. There's nothing blocking. It was totally voluntary. So this was not about global warming. This was not about the environment. This was about sticking a thumb in the eye of polite society, the elites, the globalists. This was a Steve Bannon-led thing designed to change America's role in the world. And so to me, the effect is much worse on the global diplomacy and the idea of a world order than it is, at least in the short term, about climate change. And the effects, I think, are ruinous. You can't lead the world and stick your thumb in the eye of the world. People, if you act extremely selfishly to other people, they'll start acting extremely selfishly to you. And that's about to happen. And so as the idea that America could lead the world and should influence the world and should have friendship with other powerful nations in the world, that's an idea that took a big hit this week.
But as we famously heard him say yesterday, Mark, the president said, I'm here to represent the people of Pittsburgh and not the people of Paris.
Yeah, no, it was a nice alliterative line that didn't have much relevance in reality. Pittsburgh having supported Hillary Clinton and basically being a green city, and I think it was a political decision. One can say, in defense of the president, I guess he kept his word. He hasn't been known as a truth teller always. No one's confused him with George Washington on veracity, but he kept his word on the Trans-Pacific trade treaty. He kept his word on NATO and that he was going to belittle it or at least diminish it, and he's kept his word here. And I think that was probably the strongest argument inside.
Yeah, I'm just struck by the fact that his is an administration driven solely by resentment. He'll side with the Steve Bannon side if that position will alienate the people he feels resentful for. He'll side with the regular Republican side and the budgetary, the more free market side, if that will offend elite opinion. It seems to be all based on some sense of resentment, of sense of social inferiority, a sense of fragile ego, him just wanting to stick the eye in the people he's resenting. And I more than any other time, we've talked about Donald Trump not telling the truth a lot over the last year. But that global warming speech, to me, set new standards of just being irrelevant to the facts. we devote our lives to talking about the evidence. We write these wonky columns about exciting things and this and that. And what Donald Trump said about the Paris Accord is just has no engagement with reality. The fact that somehow we're bound by this, that somehow that we'd be under some sort of legal liability if we didn't abide by the Paris Accords, the fact that the Chinese are given permission by Paris to do this and we're not, all that has no contact with reality, and it doesn't seem like Donald Trump knows that.
He does.
As number of commentators made, it doesn't seem like lying, it just seems like willful ignorance and disinterest. And we have had a lot of presidents with a lot of disagreements, but there's been an attachment to some sort of basic research, some basic contact with reality, which it seems there's just been a failure of intellectual virtue here. And because there's some underlying psychological issues which he's working out, and whatever he needs to do that, the facts have to fit that lower reality.
Yeah, I just add to that, Judy. What compounds it is not, if you're on the other side of the argument, you're not wrong, you're not mistaken, your facts aren't incorrect. You're evil. You're part of a conspiracy, and whatever one thinks, we are all of us, all the human beings, are passengers on this little spaceship of ours with very precious supplies, vulnerable supplies of air and water and soil, and any attempt to make it rational, to make it just, to help humans, make people more safe and secure and healthy, is to be commended. And he all of a sudden really did regard this as selling out the United States, and to cede to China, the leadership in the green industry, is an abdication. He accused Barack Obama, and so did many Republicans, of leading from the rear. Mm-hmm. And this is retreating to the rear. At every possible level, and I just cannot overstate NATO. NATO brought a sustained period of peace, more sustained than any time since the French Revolution, to the continent of Europe. I mean, that is an achievement of such historical magnitude, and to just dismiss that, he's not even aware of it. I don't think he understands it.
From a purely political standpoint, David, I mean, the president, one assumes he thinks this is a smart thing to do. I mean, is it a smart thing for him to do?
I think so. Yeah, I do think so. Environment has never driven political voters, I do not think. I can't remember a time when environmental issues really rose to that level. And anytime you can pit the economy versus the environment and say, I'm siding with the economy, politically, again, not on the merits, not what I think of it, I think it's probably a winning issue. And then finally, you have to remember this is an administration whose polling and whose interest is focused on about 12 states, and that's a lot of coal country. And so if people in that part of the world with some justice, a minor justice, see Donald Trump as their savior against the elites in Paris, then politically, he's taking aside the merits. Politically, I think it's probably a good move for him.
You agree it's winning politically?
Well, I thought Governor Jerry Brown made a case last night in his interview with you. It pointed out that California is the toughest, greenest standards in the country, far more draconian by Trump's standard measure than anything environmentally. 2 million new jobs, gross domestic product growing 40% faster than the nation, in spite of, because of the greenness. So I think a case can be made, but I just think, I don't know, I just think there's a limit to the isolation. This sort of this defensive, paranoid, and whatever you call it, nationalism. It isn't even nationalism. Yeah. It's just sort of everybody, all strangers. They're all, they're all bad. They wish us no well. They're trying
us
to
versus
steal our job on every matter.
Yeah, but do you notice how what used to be substantive disagreements turned into cultural wars? It's like the gun issue. It used to be the gun issue. Gun control was about what kind of guns we should have floating around our society. But then it became rural versus urban. Mm-hmm. And the substance didn't actually matter that much. And one has a sense with global warming, it's not about substance anymore. It's about what culture, in our cultural divide, which culture are you on? And so he aligned with one culture, or rural culture, which is his base. And that's why I think from his point of view, it solidifies that which he needs to survive.
Well, it seems like a long time ago, but it was just really just a couple of days ago, Mark, that we were hearing reports about the White House in disarray, the president planning to fire people, rearrange the staff in an attempt to get beyond the focus on the Russia investigation and everything else. I mean, you couple that with the Paris announcement. Do you see this White House in any sense getting beyond, getting its hands around the I don't know, dysfunction that appears to be
I really don't.
gripping?
I really don't, Judy. I mean, just imagine yourself, you're Reince Priebus, you're the chief of staff, and you complained to a friend, or, said he hadn't been able to spend time with his children for the past 4 months. And what does he read every day in the paper? The president calls him Reincey, refers to him as Reincey. He's going to be ambassador to Greece. They're going to get him out. They're going to replace him. Who's going to replace him? You can't thrive. You can't be productive in that kind of environment where you're looking over your shoulder and who's conspiring over here and what faction. Are you Kushner? Are you Bannon? And it just, Judy, I mean, they work long hours, they work hard, and they're uncertain. They're being sniped at. There's no appreciation. There's no sense of shared mission. And the reward is when you tell the president what he wants to hear. It's the antithesis of Jim Baker and Ronald Reagan, where a president was secure enough and confident enough to ask a chief of staff for advice that he didn't want to hear, that was tough.
Does all this matter, David, quickly, or inside baseball?
Well, it matters if we don't have an effective administration. I mean, the Reince Priebus has the ultimate job security right now is that nobody else wants the job, so they can't get rid of him because somebody's got to do it. But I do think it makes the prospect of a functional White House very remote because you can't get new people because they don't want it. The current people are in some sort of war with each other, and every time we hear about something internal, whether it was the decision-making over global warming or the shambolic attempt to get an FBI director, it just sounds like disorganization.
And more reports tonight about investigations, the Mueller probe. David Brooks, Mark Shields, thank you both.
Judy.